Look at all of you amazing event profs filtering back into the room. You found us right on time, which is great because you are not going to want to be late for this session. I got to jump into both of the interactive conversations we were just having, and they were both super, super interesting. And so it's time to give our minds a little break. The theme is unplugged, and we wanted to do something a little fun. So we're excited that Sparkn was able to join us. They do these really cool 15-minute entertainment breaks for anything, corporate events, and whatever, anytime you need a little brain buster. And I think it's just super cool that we get to be joined today by Justin Blake from the Rockhopper Fund to talk to us about sharks. Justin, welcome. I hear you are the shark expert.
Hello, Liz, and hello, everybody else. Welcome. Thank you for having me here today to attend your exciting event. My name is Justin, and I'm in Cape Town, South Africa. So it is 7 p.m. for me here in South Africa. And as mentioned, this is a little 15 minutes diversion, a dive into a completely different world to hopefully have a bit of a break and stimulate some other senses before we head on back to your regular programming.
Yes,
Uh,
love it.
Thank you, Liz. If you wouldn't mind sharing my screen there, and I have some photos and videos for everybody as we take 15 minutes to talk about something very close to my heart: sharks, big fish, and the ocean. So this picture coming through here is a photo of my colleague and friend, Dr. Ryan Daly. He is freediving, so holding his breath, swimming into the underwater world up to a silver tip shark, camera in hand, of course, to take some photos. All of the photos and videos I have to share with you today are either taken by me or of me. How does this work? Well, a quick introduction is a good place to start before I introduce you to one famous shark. The technology that we've used to uncover this famous shark's life, right, out there in the ocean is a challenging place for humans. So, how do we know anything about these animals, where they go, what do they do right now? While you and I are chatting, what are these animals doing? So the technology that we get to use to uncover their secret lives and learn a thing or two about them before touching on a solution. The reason I do this work is conservation. And so what can we do to help these sharks out? There is an opportunity for Q&A at the end, a short period for perhaps a few questions. But please, everybody, if you have any questions at any moment, bomb them in the chat. They can filter through to me and I can incorporate them into the next few minutes. So I urge everybody, questions and answers, bring them through starting right now. Okay, so a quick introduction to who this person is. My name is Justin. Jessica is my wife, and Archie is almost 2 years old, here in Cape Town as spring has just recently sprung. I'm a shark scientist with a master's degree in marine biology. I started the Rockhopper Fund, which is the organization that I represent. We do the work that we are talking about right now: shark science and conservation. I also get to work in underwater films, so from documentaries produced by Netflix, Amazon Prime, the BBC, and Planet Earth 3, and a whole bunch of others. These incredible things that I get to do out there in the ocean help me do what I love: sharing the remarkable stories that science helps us to uncover with anybody who's willing to chat about them, in the hope that we connect with these animals and protect them. All right, enough about me. It's on to the reason we are here today. It's one famous shark. Her name is Frankie. She is a bull shark, and I met her in a little place called Ponta de Ora in Mozambique. Now, Mozambique is on the border of South Africa, and well, Ponta de Ora is on the border of South Africa and Mozambique, our neighboring country here in Africa. She lives in an incredibly warm, tropical kind of environment full of life. Animals such as giant trevally, giant whales that arrive here each and every year to breed, manta rays, bull sharks, tiger sharks, great white sharks, and even sea turtles that nest on the beaches each and every year. This place is simply remarkable, and it's a place that we've been going back to for the last 12 years to uncover the secrets that take place out there. Now, in order to follow these sharks and these giant fish like these giant trevally, we have to catch them and tag them. Here's my colleague and friend again. He's holding up a circle hook. This is used to catch sharks so that we can release them afterwards. It's specially designed with a bit of a weird bend in it so that it hooks her in the corner of her lip only, not in her throat, her stomach, or in her gills, where sharks and fish breathe. With a cable, because she's got sharp teeth, right? A rope and a float, we can hook her and pull her up next to the boat quite quickly. So we use this heavy equipment so we can pull her up next to the boat and flip her upside down. Now, if you know a thing or two about sharks, you'll know that when you turn a shark upside down, any shark, big or small, they fall asleep. Like that, almost instantly. The moment we turn her upside down, she falls asleep into a trance called tonic immobility. She's fast asleep in my arms, and that allows us to measure her, which tells us how old she is, how much she weighs. We can take samples from her muscle or blood or skin, and that tells us who she's been eating, who she's related to, toxins in her system, and even if she's pregnant. We can find out a whole bunch of things just holding her next to the boat. We would then, of course, tag her with, in this case, a satellite tag. And that allows us to follow her as she swims through the ocean. So some sharks come to the surface, and that's pretty important for satellite tags because there's no signal underwater, right? The ocean is a pretty challenging place for us. Electronics don't work, and there's almost no signal underwater. Very little. In fact, there's no satellite signal under the ocean, and so we can't follow these animals if they spend time under the water. Luckily for us, some sharks come to the surface, and we get a kind of map like you see here with these yellow dots linked together with yellow lines. Following these sharks as they swim to the surface, updating us when they come, as they swim through the ocean, updating us as they come to the surface. Now, in the case of Frankie, she has a slightly different satellite tag. She doesn't come to the surface very often, so we have to use a tag that does come to the surface. It's called a pop-up satellite tag, and it takes a whole bunch of readings over 6 months, and then floats to the surface, releasing itself from the shark with this little lanyard that dissolves. Once at the surface, it can send us that information. She also happens to have a second tag, which is called an acoustic tag. And just to touch on this, because it's a fairly interesting tag, it's the most commonly used tag around the world's oceans, and it takes advantage of something that does travel underwater: sound. So an acoustic tag makes a sound, ding, and we listen for that sound with what's called a listening station. These are anchored all the way through the world's oceans in an array. They are a universal technology. And so anywhere that Frankie or any of her friends swim with that tag, she'll be able to make a sound, and our listening stations will be able to hear that sound, telling us the time and the date that she swam past that particular listening station. Now, Frankie doesn't come to the surface, so we can't use a satellite a website that updates us in real time. We have to look back. We have to wait a whole year before we get any information from Frankie. And so here is here is an animation to show us what happened last year. Frankie and 2 of her friends are hanging out in a river, very down far south in Africa, almost at the southern tip of Africa, in a little river called the Breda River. Now, to set the scene before I hit play, we have summer, autumn or fall, winter, and spring, showing the seasons change. And just a note that up is warm, down is cool, here in the southern hemisphere. So as I hit play, let's see what these sharks did last year. Well, at the end of summer, all 3 of them, Frankie was the first one, the orange one, they packed their bags and they started swimming north. All 3 of them, as it got cold in winter, arrived 1,500 miles away in their winter home, warm Mozambique. They hung out over cold winter in warm Mozambique, and at the end of the winter, they turned around and swam 1,500 miles back down the exact same route to the exact same river that they left the summer before. I'm going to play it again because it's something that gets even better. Frankie, this incredible shark, left the exact same river on the exact same date 3 years in a row, swimming a 3,000-mile round trip into our neighboring country, Mozambique. Warm Mozambique over cold winter. And then 2 of these sharks arrived back within 24 hours, Frankie just a few days later. Sharks we thought were mindless munchers swimming through the ocean, eating everything in their pathway. It turns out they're actually creatures of habit, and they have summer and winter homes, like the birds that fly north and south, like the trees, right, that lose their leaves and grow new leaves every spring. Now we know a thing or two about these animals, right? We've learned a thing or two over the last 12 years. We also know that they're in trouble. So what can we do to help them out? Well, the good news is that we know how to help sharks out, and it's called a marine reserve. This is our study site, Ponta d'Ora, the Ponta d'Ora Marine Reserve. It's a safe place in the world's oceans, safe for these animals to hang out. Why do we want sharks in the oceans? That's probably a good question to start with. Well, sharks keep everybody in check. They keep those medium sized fish in check so that they don't eat all of the reef. They only eat some of the reef, leaving the rest of the reef to produce food for everybody else. That's a healthy ocean. If we take sharks away, the medium sized fish get so numerous that they eat all the food. Now there's no food for anybody, and the system collapses. Right? So sharks can take an ocean from unhealthy to healthy simply by leaving them alone. Right? The ocean can heal. A healthy ocean gives us every second breath that we breathe, so it produces oxygen, and it also sucks carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. At 70% of the planet, that's a pretty good ally when it comes to some of the challenges we see today. So we have these marine reserves that do this amazing job, but we need more. We have a challenge. Where do we put them? And if we're going to stop people from fishing in a place that they're used to fishing, how are people happy about that? Right? How do we keep people happy? Well, the first challenge is that's pretty easy. We tag and track sharks. As apex predators, they lead us to what we call critical habitats, the most important places in the world's oceans, like 30 tons of giant trevally that arrive in Ponta d'Ora each and every year. Right? This is a critical habitat with a huge, the biggest aggregation of giant trevally ever recorded. The sharks lead us to the important places, and we protect those places first. How do we keep people happy? Well, those of us from California, thank you. You've been leading the charge, showing the world how to do this. Sanctuary zones in marine reserves are off limits. We then create restricted zones in the marine reserve where you can do some things but not others. Let's say scuba diving, but no fishing. Then multiple use zones, of course, are a place where you can do what you're accustomed, what you're used to doing in that area. The magic is what happens next. The top two zones, while there's no fishing allowed, the bottom zone is where the fishing takes place. So cast your eyes to the sanctuary on the left. Now you'll notice the fish start getting a little bit bigger, and bigger fish have more babies. Now no one's fishing there, so some other fish arrive. There's a bit more food, bigger fish, more babies. Some sharks arrive, some octopus, and a few other species. No one's taking anything out of this area, so it gets pretty full. The scuba diving zone, well, there's a bit of disturbance. There's some people around, but again, no fishing. The fish start getting bigger. Bigger fish have more babies. Those babies have babies, and these two zones are now looking pretty squashed. There's not a lot of space for anybody left. What happens next if we can just wait 5 years? Well, we see spillover into the fishing areas, and now the fishermen are pretty happy because we're catching more fish over time. If we can wait just a little bit longer, marine reserves spill over outside of the marine reserves into the waters adjacent. We know that if we protect 5% more of the world's oceans, we will take a 20% higher yield from the oceans. Protect 5, take 20. Now, I studied fish, but that sounds like a pretty good deal to me. Okay, as I wrap this up, this is the emotional part right over here. This is Frankie. She's upside down in my arms. This is me in the middle over there. I'm literally cuddling a bull shark, right? A full-grown, massive female bull shark in my arms. I'm hugging this shark. We have a moment and a bond. And as I release her, she turns over and swims down into her watery home. I realize that we catch and kill 100 million sharks a year. And only 2.7% of the world's oceans are considered actually protected. So for the next 40 years, she's at risk. She's going to live that long. I hope that as she swims away, the shark that I've had this moment with, this bond with, she avoids those hooks and nets. I hope that she spends all of her time in those few marine reserves dotted through the world's oceans, safe places that create healthy oceans. And I hope that with those tags, she sends us data So much information. With that data, we can identify more critical habitats, create more marine reserves that protect her, and create healthy oceans into the future. So thank you everybody for taking a little bit of time out of your Techsy Talk Unplugged. Simply by joining in today, you and I have just protected Frankie and her friends, creating healthy oceans together. There are some links that should be coming through in the group chat if anybody would like to learn a little bit more about what we do here at the Rockhopper Fund, or reach out with any questions that you might have. That is my 15-minute spark, a little distraction from everything that we have been doing up until now. Back to Liz, if you don't mind stopping
Yeah.
that there and heading back to you, Liz.
Sure, that was amazing. Very interesting. Lots of shark gifs in our chat over there. There was a quick question, and I'm going to see if there's any others that come in. So if you have a question,
Okay,
put it
I
in the chat
haven't
now.
seen any questions in my chat, so if you'd mind just reading those out to me.
Yes, yes. So someone just asked, Jonathan is curious why we are seeing an uptick in shark attacks in shallow waters, for example, less than a meter deep.
Right. Okay, sorry, I did see that in the group chat
Just
there.
came in.
So we're not. The number of people killed by sharks is staying pretty static. 4 people are killed by sharks each and every year, and so we're not really seeing an uptick in shark attacks. But why we have a perceived uptick in shark attacks? One, the population of humans has grown a lot. Where do most people swim? In the shallow waters. Where's the highest chance of somebody encountering a shark? Well, where most people swim. We have sharks in the middle of the ocean, the depths of the ocean, and even in the rivers, like the Mississippi or the Amazon. And so the places where most people hang out, that increases the chances of shark-human encounters. Even with a global population that's at 8 billion, or almost 8 billion now, we're still seeing, and a shark population that's rapidly declining, we're seeing a kind of static number of attacks on people. So another, just to add to that, is better wetsuits and better technology, drones, things like that. So we're seeing more of these animals, and we get this perception that we are seeing more attacks.
Very
I hope that
interesting.
makes sense to
Yes.
Jonathan.
We also have a question from Jennifer who wants to know, how did you, how did you learn to speak so well? Is this something you did a lot of pre-COVID?
So I've been forced to become an entrepreneurial scientist. Scientists are taught to apply for funding, spend that funding, and start again at square one. Apply for funding, spend that funding. That doesn't make sense to me, right? That's not a growth mindset. That's not a way to do more and more and more. So entrepreneurship was a way that I've always supported the research and conservation projects that we've run. In-person tours, taking people out, diving underwater, showing people these remarkable animals. And as COVID hit, tourism died. I moved into the online space and have been, I guess, practicing more and more ways of sharing these remarkable stories in the most engaging way that I know how. Certainly not my area of expertise, but I guess practice makes perfect if you have the right mindset.
I think it worked very well. So thank you for joining us today. We did have a few other questions, but we have to move on, unfortunately. But thank you for giving us a little mental break from all the crazy content we're
Excellent.
covering throughout the 2 days.
Please reach out on social media or on our website if anyone has any further questions. I would love to talk sharks with anybody after.
I think a few people will take you up on that. So thank you so much.
Wonderful.